Okay, folks, I think we're just about ready to get started. We are 1 minute behind schedule, so if you can please find your seat. Thank you. Okay, good morning and welcome to our Spring 2023 Town Hall focused on civic engagement. I'm Dr. Amber Lopez Lassiter and I serve as the Chief of Staff and Strategy here at the college. Yay, and I'm back on campus, so that's pretty exciting. It's so great to be here today as we seek to educate and empower our community on important topics that affect us all. I want to also welcome everyone who is watching online and to thank the people who worked hard to make today's town hall come together. Can we please give our events team and everyone in our culture planning and policy department a big round of applause. Wonderful. We've assembled a tremendous panel, which you'll hear from momentarily, as well as a Legislative Session 101 workshop facilitated by the Progressive Leadership Alliance immediately following the panel. And at about 10:35, we will turn to the microphones for live questions, and you can also submit your live questions via the YouTube link. The team worked today to craft a program to help equip you with the information, resources, and strategies so you too can engage with lawmakers, feel empowered to ask questions on policy issues that impact your life, and of course, be ready to advocate for yourself and others, and maybe dinosaurs and unicorns. There are so many ways to use your voice, from signing an online petition, providing a quote for a press release, testifying down here in Las Vegas, or heading up to Carson City. Collective action has a compounding effect. I've been around politics long enough to provide this little tidbit, and it's something you may have heard before, but in politics, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So I'll just let that sink in. Nevada's legislative session started last week. I think we're 111 days out from the conclusion, but who's counting? And even at this exact moment, lawmakers are making decisions on policies. They're funding budgets and programs that could have a direct impact on your life, your community, or someone that you care about. And so let me conclude with this. Don't let yourself be on the menu. We need you to be at the table sharing your voice and expertise and insight. We need you to be ready to build a new table. President Barack Obama said, "In the face of impossible odds, people who love this country can change it." I believe that wholeheartedly, and I've seen it firsthand. Your advocacy matters. I want to thank all of the Scorpions here today and our community members for joining us, and very much look forward to turning this over and hearing from our distinguished panel. Thank you.
There we go, technology. Thank you so much, Amber. We're gonna welcome you to our panel as well. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Molly Apple. I'm an assistant professor of English in the Humanities Department here at Nevada State, and I'm also currently the vice chair of the Faculty Senate, and here's my wonderful co-moderator.
Hi everyone, my name is Mariana Sarmiento. I am the manager for the Undocumented Student Program here at Nevada State College in the Office of Community, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion.
I wanted to say really quickly about why Mariana and I wanted to bring this panel. We're working on the Legislative Affairs Subcommittee of Faculty Senate this year, and we were really brainstorming about what mattered to us about community engagement with the legislative session, and it's really about that. How do we enfranchise our communities to be heard and get involved? And we understand how so often folks don't know how to, or even know that they can engage with these sessions, and may not even be clear of how important it is. And so we wanted to do what we could to make the hidden curriculum of this engagement much more visible and accessible, thanks to our panelists' experience, as well as other leaders who we know are in the room right now. And I really want to thank Amy Evaluna and Ruby Ortega for being so game for our town hall takeover. NSC is a community of the new majority, and we know that this really means BIPOC folks, folks who have been economically marginalized and are risking so much for the payoff of an education. And it's a disturbing moment for our new majority. What we've seen coming out of Florida, what just happened at Michigan State earlier this week. The communities who are hurting from this are our communities too. And protecting and insisting on our humanity, on the urgency for a safe and liberatory education is not just a trendy political issue, it is at the heart of what we do here at Nevada State. And so the more that we can help each other learn to effectively engage in these political spaces, the more effectively we do the work at the heart of our mission.
Absolutely. So throughout this session, please think about, or throughout today's town hall actually, think about one issue that really matters to you, whether it's something related to our campus or off campus, and really try to use that lens as a way to view even the panelists' answers and the workshop later that's being put together by Plan. We hope today is a starting point. Obviously, there's much more to learn, but hopefully these can give you some solid tools and resources as you move forward through this session.
So we're so happy to have our panelists here. We have, starting on the far side of the room, we have Kevin Osorio with us. He's an NSSA officer, amazingly experienced youth leader for the Nevada Assembly District 14, Erika Mosca's district, and was a former intern with Congresswoman Susie Lee. Wave, Kevin, hello. Come back over here. We have, of course, Anthony Ruiz, our Deputy Chief of Staff for Government Relations, and he has joined us, dipping his head out of the Carson City madness to join us for this panel today. Thank you so much. And I'm thrilled to also have Lauren Allman, who is an associate professor of psychology, as well as the chair of the department, and was our faculty senate chair and the chair of chairs during the previous legislative session, and has an immense amount of knowledge. So thank you to our panelists so much for being here. Mariana, you want to kick it off?
Yes, we'll kick it off with our first question. We will have opportunities later for questions that come in online or audience questions as well. So our first question is, one of the main reasons we decided to focus this town hall on the legislative session is because we wanted to promote a space for folks to feel like they're allowed to engage regardless of their individual circumstances or whether they've been made to feel by our society that their voices don't matter. What has been your experience in engaging with the legislature or other civic offices, and why has that been important to you?
Well, I guess I'll start off, right? Thank you again for the question. I really appreciate it. So, my experience engaging with the legislature has been, truly it comes from my work with Assemblywoman Erika Mosca. I consider myself a community leader in my district, and if you don't know, Assemblywoman Erika Mosca's district is on the east side of Vegas, and so that's where I've been born and raised. And so I'm pretty much her surrogate in what she calls a youth committee, where I assist her in community outreach, I make events for her, and I assist her within the district when she's in Carson, right? And I also have been Congresswoman Lee's district intern during the summer, and then I got extended into the fall. So I worked directly with the Congresswoman for her portfolio areas in Latinx, in environment, in healthcare, and veterans outreach. And so I also assisted constituents in getting them connected with our federal agencies. You know, if they needed help with passports or anything like that, I assisted directly with all constituents in CD3. So that's my experience with connecting with civic offices and the legislature.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And Anthony can attest to this as well. Not only was I a Senate chair for Nevada State, but I also served as the chair of chairs for all of the Senate chairs representing each NC institution during the 81st legislative session, but also the special session that happened before that, which was right at the height of COVID and budget cuts, and that was really my first introduction into legislative advocacy, kind of wearing those hats. And I was really kind of thrust into that. It was very fast and furious. We're texting. Hopefully we'll pull back some of the layers of what it means to kind of follow legislative hearings through the whole 120-day session. But my first experience was during that very quick summer special session, and things go late into the evening. If you are really trying to engage, it's sometimes not for the faint of heart. You're up until midnight, waiting until the public comment opens, and then you're sitting on your phone, or again, if you're lucky to be at one of the in-person locations, And at least in the legislative session, if there's a lot of public comment, they limit it to 1 hour per in favor, in opposition, or neutral. And so, again, I'm sure we'll talk more about those logistics, but it's really exciting. This is my 10th year here in Nevada, and I have considered myself someone who is engaged, but it was only when I got to participate in that did I really get to see what it looked like kind of behind the curtain and how easy it can be. So even if you can't wait up all night to give your 2 minutes via phone or in person, there are definitely other ways to engage. And I know we have some of our community partners here that can help facilitate that for you as well.
And you picked a great session to start with, the special session of 2020, because that was a doozy, but you did a great job. So I'm Anthony Ruiz. My personal experience in politics, I first got started in 2008 as a high school senior. I was, I guess, I don't know if it was like officially, but we started a Students for Barack Obama club in my high school. I couldn't vote, but I could organize, and that's really what got me interested in politics. And I also had the opportunity to intern for this gentleman you may have heard of, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, in 2010. I was a perennial intern for him in college, which was an amazing experience, both on the campaign side, at the district office, and then in DC as well. So it was really amazing to meet the quality of the team that he had working for him that have since gone on to do some amazing things. And I've been involved in politics or policy in some way or another since then. This will be my 4th legislative session in Nevada, not counting special sessions, which are a little different, but 4th full legislative session, 3rd for the college. Today is day 11 of the Nevada legislature, for those keeping track. I am, certainly. So we're just under 10% done. And the work is ongoing. As we're speaking right now, there is a hearing to make Juneteenth recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday. I would testify on that bill, but Berner Rhodes Ford is going to do an amazing job providing documenting Nevada State's support of that. So I think I'm happy to hear what folks have to say and really from the rest of this panelists. But I go back to where I started. You've got to engage. I mean, I couldn't even vote, and I was working to get involved in politics and policy. And I think that's really where it starts. And in particular, with a state, we have a system of, citizen legislators, and we'll probably come back to that again as well. But, these are people that have other jobs, other perspectives. They're not, professional politicians. They're people just like me and you. And I think that's important and really gives us more share and voice in our political process.
Thank you, guys. So much inspiring work that you've all done. And we know that at the same time that this rapid legislative session is happening, we also have another really important avenue for raising our voices and our advocacy efforts with the Board of Regents, which also has been happening at the same time. And so we'd also love to hear about your experience balancing and engaging with Board of Regents meetings as well, how different those can be and how you see our campus community engaging with those spaces. Can we go, maybe we can start with Laura and go Anthony and Kevin. It's a different approach.
Sure, thank you. The teacher in me is wanting to take a step back for just a moment. So I know many people are new to Nevada or new to the system, and to just situate where Nevada State kind of falls in the hierarchy. So Nevada State is one of 8 institutions in the system, Nevada system of higher education. And so the Board of Regents is our governing body, and they help make policy for our system. So when I was Senate chair, we were dealing with a lot of policies related to vaccine requirements, just as an example. And then at the entry level or above the entry level, obviously you have the state legislature, and our legislature meets every 2 years, and they are the ones who approve the budgets that then trickle down. Well, they approve the entry budget, and then entry divides based on funding formulas and any number of complex things. So just to kind of compare and contrast how you might engage with each of those bodies, the state legislature versus the Board of Regents. The state legislature obviously is the one making laws. and passing the budget. And so things related to, as I'm sure will come up, and I know everyone got a little sheet on potential legislation. Of most import, I think, on many of our minds is the COLA, potentially bonuses, which was very interesting, yeah, as well as your health benefits. That's kind of really happening at the legislative level. At the Board of Regents level, those are things that are going to directly impact us. And I would argue that you as an individual, as an NSC member, as an NSC employee, should really be engaging most heavily with the Board of Regents, because they are the ones who can actually impact your day-to-day. Do we have vaccine mandates or not? Will we get merit in the next year or not? Will there be changes to certain things? And so I would always say, keep your eyes on the Board of Regents meetings. They happen quarterly, but there will be occasionally special meetings, things that come up, anything related to searches. So a chancellor search is ongoing right now. We recently had elections for the board and vice chair. They have the most power in setting the agenda in terms of what gets on the board, what gets on the agenda to be voted for. So I'll pause to let my colleagues speak, but I would really argue that you want to be following Board of Regents, because they are the ones that are going to have the impact on your day-to-day as at least an employee and a student here.
I think that was great and a good, I mean, you covered a lot. I think I'd just add, there's a couple of things that make the Board of Regents a little different. So there's 13 of them, which is, they're almost like this separate mini legislature, if you will, but don't tell them I call them mini, but they, it's really, they have their own set of, quirks and things that make them unique. They have their own processes. They are subject to open meeting law, unlike the Nevada legislature, which you do see a lot of more, far-ranging discussions of the meeting, because, they're not having a lot of those discussions offline. They can't, right, because of the open meeting law restrictions. So you do see this process play out, and it's quite interesting to watch. I think something that I saw in some of the questions submitted too was, okay, where do I find this information? Where's this agenda posted? How do I access this presentation? And I think that's really the number one advice is, you have to spend time finding out where some of this information is located, how to access it, and what's the structure, right? What are the subcommittees of the boards of the regions, right? We even review this all the time, is to make a change in the handbook. How do you do that? How do you actually implement that change? Does it have to go through one reading or two? When are the quarterly meetings? Where do they cycle through in terms of location and north and south? When is your institution's metric presentation? And they kind of happen on the cycle. Ours is in March next month. So, I think that understanding that it's really truly own special body that has its own special rules and practices and differences, I think that's really important to engage. And then very similar to the Nevada legislature, they're not professional politicians. They do get 6-year terms, which is quite interesting, but they, these people have other jobs and backgrounds and experiences. They don't get paid, I think, very much at all, if anything, to do that job, right? So I think that makes them potentially more relatable to us and some of the work we're doing. I've heard in many different circumstances that they were moved by public testimony one way or another. I know that there was a big mobilization of graduate students at last June's meeting at UNR to sort of advocate for additional stipends for these graduate assistants. They referenced that a lot. I think that was important. And I absolutely just had a lot of respect for all the participants from Nevada State who made the trip to Elko all the way to advocate for the renaming. Of course, Kevin was one of them, but they do listen to us. And I think, again, it goes back to how we started. If you don't make your issues known, if you don't advocate, you're leaving up to chance, and I don't think that's a good thing. So I think that the regions are pretty accessible, and I think that we as a community here, speaking in this room and people watching online, I think we have an opportunity to change that. So that's just kind of my perspective and how to approach the regions a little differently.
Well, thank you again. And everything that has been said, I just want to echo as well that It's really important to be active because at the end of the day, the Board of Regents is also representing our institution, our students, and our faculty, everyone who works here, right? So it's important for us to be civically engaged and to hold these members accountable to who they represent, right? So my experience at the Board of Regents comes from my advocacy within NSSA, specifically when we went up to Elko for Nevada State's college name change to Nevada State University. And I can surely say that it was an experience that was very rewarding, just because it was the first time that I, as a student, was actually engaged with a legislative body, right? And I truly have to thank Anthony and Dr. Marcela Rodriguez, because they truly made an effort to train the NSA officers who were going up to Elko to know how to give public comment. And it was most of our first times giving public comment. So I would truly have to thank them and showing us how to properly do this, right? And again, we are going to have another Board of Regents meeting in March, I think the 9th and the 10th. And if any student is civically engaged, and if they want to participate, or if any professor here wants their students to attend, I would say to connect them directly to NSA, because we can go ahead and help them, train for public comment and see how they can better be engaged within the legislative process. And another thing about the Board of Regents too is that Assemblywoman Mosca is proposing a BDR. It's BDR 34-523, which is seeking to allow students who owe fees to their energy institution to access their transcripts and later pay back those fees. And that's going to go through the legislator, and if passed, it's going to go through the Board of Regents as well. And so that just creates more access for students to be equitable in the sense of the workplace, to see, because a lot of students who owe their fees are not able to access their transcripts. So that's one way that, if you are in support of it, that you can go ahead and give public comment through the Board of Regents when it passes, right? So that's some of my experience within the Board of Regents meeting, and it's very important to be active. And I'll just keep echoing that. So I thank everyone here again.
Thank you all so much.
Can we pause just a moment to have a comment on how to give public comment?
Yeah, did you want to?
You're also going to get a chance to learn from our wonderful workshop
Wonderful.
runners in the second half of the town hall. But
Well, I was just I'm someone that has generalized anxiety, and the way that I cope with it is to understand all of the logistics. And I think in terms of giving public comment at Board of Regents or in the legislative session, when I was doing it, it was height of pandemic, and a lot of it happened virtually, which actually was really cool and made it very accessible for people who could not get to Carson City or to the Grant Story building in downtown Las Vegas. But you have 2 minutes. Please rehearse or write down what you want to say. It goes by quickly and they will cut you off. So 2 minutes, rehearse. At the very beginning, you need to state your name and you need to spell your name because someone is transcribing it. If you were speaking on a specific agenda item, say my comment is for agenda item 3 on the renaming, or I'm going to talk about agenda item 3, the renaming, and 15 are metrics, whatever it is. And then you speak to your issue. And I think you can have emotion, whether it's anger or sadness or happiness, whatever it is, those are your 2 minutes, and they cannot cut you off, again, unless you're saying something very violent or something like that. It is your 2 minutes, and they just have to listen. They might, I've seen it, Brooks wants to respond, and the chair is like, no, you cannot respond. It is your 2 minutes. So state your name, spell it out. It goes by quick, so be ready to adjust as you're kind of seeing the time if you're in person. And if you're online, which is true for the legislative session now, it's kind of like Zoom. They will basically call people at random. So you have to really pay attention to the phone number that you called from. They'll say, will the caller with the last digits 5937, please unmute and speak your thing. So you have to really be ready to know how to unmute, practice if you need to. I know that helps with my anxiety, so.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much for that, especially the Zoom piece. I think that's really important. So this is our last question for the panelists that we've prepared. Although we know that as individuals, we have power, we also know there's a lot of power in organizing collectively with others who share similar values, goals, and advocacy interests. How do you think community organizations or groups play a role in getting individuals' concerns acknowledged? For example, NSSA, NFA, or any of the orgs that are tabling here today? Yeah, you can.
Sure, I can get us started. And I think when I think of how groups advocate, I think the biggest thing that groups do is help obviously organize around an issue that's important to them, but also share and provide information. So these groups sort of act as a network of the things we talked about earlier. When is this meeting? How to do public comment. Tips and things on that. There's trainings that are parts of groups, but the thing that I think resonates with me, and I think a lot of these elected officials, is that groups have the ability to share their unique individual perspective, something that, as a lobbyist, it's hard for me to share. They probably get sick of hearing from me a lot about a certain issue, but, I can't tell a story better than our students can tell a story for themselves, and so, or an external group. And so I think that's how I view groups and their role in this process, is that they have these truly authentic ways to sort of say what's happening on the ground. I think that's the role that they play, and it can be very effective.
In terms of kind of community organizations or groups, obviously I know we have several community organizations here. Our colleague from College of Southern Nevada, Sandra Cosgrove, is here with her organization where she's the executive director of Vote Nevada, Plan, ACDC, One APIA. If you're not on Twitter during the legislative session, you've got to get on Twitter. That's where all the action is happening. I have a saved one, hashtag NBLeg, like ledge, legislature, NBLeg, that you can, if you're following people, you can follow those hashtags. You want to follow lots of very engaged people because they can help direct your attention to things as they are happening. For employees, academic and administrative faculty, I would highly encourage you to follow our Nevada Faculty Alliance at NVFac Alliance. As well as our legislative advocacy person, Kent Irvin. He's a faculty member at University of Nevada, Reno. Email him directly. I don't know if we have a slide here. I asked, perfect, wonderful. Giving a plug for NFA because they are heavily organized, both at the Board of Regents and in the legislative session. Kent and Doug Unger from UNLV, faculty member there, are actively roaming the halls of Carson City as we speak, again, moving around. And they have a listserv, and they will let you know what hearings are coming up, where we need support for various public comment. In fact, on Friday, the Public Employee Benefits Program, our health insurance, is having their budget presentation to the joint Assembly Ways and Means and Senate Finance Committees to talk about having their budget restored. We still have not returned to pre-pandemic levels in terms of our health benefits. We don't have long-term disability insurance anymore. Our copays have gone up. Lots of things have kind of, our life insurance policy has gone down. So there's lots of things to be advocating for. And in fact, public comment will be happening at 8 a.m. on Friday. So please follow these people. And if you also are not getting the behind the bar from Nevada Independent, they do a great summary of all the things going on. I think it comes out every Friday. So there's really low accessibility things that you could be participating in now, even if you aren't ready yet to give public comment or engage in that way, just being informed through those means.
Yeah, and then again, I just want to echo everything that's been said, right? I think it's very true. And in particular, so I'm with NSSA, right? And we're actually looking to take some students up to Carson for the Nevada State Day up in Carson City for the legislature. And if students are interested, particularly if there's any professor here who knows some students, I would highly encourage you to reach out to them and let them know that they can go ahead and send a letter of intent to nssa.nsc.edu to with the following information, right? Let's see, they have to explain why they want to attend, your commitment to attending, and why you plan and what you plan to share your experience with the NSC community. And so I think it's truly important for our students to be engaged, and in particular, Assemblywoman Erica Mosca is also committed to bringing students up to the legislature. She has many connections within the district, and in particular, she wants to focus on students to get engaged within the legislature. So if you can't make it to with us, with NSSA up to Carson for Nevada State Day, then go ahead and let me know, and I can connect you with the Assemblywoman so that we can go ahead and book a trip for you, so that we can go ahead and get some students up there. But that's what I know so far about what some organizations are interested in terms of getting groups into the legislature. But yeah, just reach out and I'll be happy to connect you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for these really awesome responses, resources. Now we're going to actually be taking some questions from the audience and our online viewers. And I believe Ruby Ortega has some more information for us. Okay, does anybody here have any questions that they'd like to ask? Please raise your hand and Ruby will come up to you with the microphone. Sounds good. Don't be shy, y'all. Let's hear from one person. One question. It could also be a follow-up. All right, we've got somebody over here. Yes.
I think it's, Christine, I think it's good for.
Hi. First of all, thank you to all the panelists. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences and these resources. And just to kind of extend, I think one of the opportunities is that there are so many ways to connect, but it can also be one of the challenges, right? We have the legislative session going on. We also have Board of Regents. We have a lot of organizations and pathways. Y'all shared some really great resources, right? Ways to connect online. NFA, Nevada Independent, I mean, just all these pieces. And I'm wondering what the next step is from this town hall to maybe gather those resources so that they can be centralized in a repository or something like that, accessible on a website for faculty, students in our community. Because I know there is a lot shared, but it can be hard to catch.
Do you want to start with
I mean, I could say very briefly, I think that's a fantastic note we'll make. I'll say, if you haven't already, please make sure and grab some of the material. We've made some QR codes and things so that you can go right to the legislative session agenda and minutes, as well as the Board of Regents, just to help make these things a little bit easier. Grab those on the way out. Stick around if you can, certainly, for our workshop by plan. And I think taking that as a next step is a great idea, Faculty Senate Chair of ours. Anthony, did you want to add?
Yeah, looking at some of the questions submitted and then some of the conversations I've had since then too, I would like to do maybe like a post-session town hall to talk about like what was done at the session, right? I think that would be maybe even more interesting to say, like, because a lot of the stuff that we've seen right now is proposals. The governor's executive proposed budget. It's going to change. So a lot of it is reacting to, we're sort of a moving target for a lot of these things. So I think something post would be really helpful too. I've also been working towards like maybe a bi-weekly newsletter, just like what's happening at the session. It's been sort of like a stretch goal just because there's a lot going on, but I do want to get there. I think there is a lot of appetite for information, so I think sending something out to the campus is just like, here's what's happening, here's like the things you got to know, even if it's not super long. I think I'm going to work towards that and try to get that done this session.
I know that when we had our presidential search, I know that our website hosted details on the agenda items that are technically through the Board of Regents. And so potentially a recommendation for our culture planning and policy unit is to have a standing page for the quarterly Board of Regents meetings and to highlight any items that are directly relevant to Nevada State. I believe in previous visual or the Dr. P's weekly addresses, she would highlight kind of important items, but I think having it kind of in a standard place, and that we could also have links. So there are two ways that you can give public comment at a Board of Regents meeting. One is in person, and I would say that is the preferred method in non-COVID days, because those are actually heard and recorded into record via the cameras and things like that. You can also submit via a form online or via email, and those get PDF'd and saved, and we believe that the regents read them. But again, your voice will be more effective if you do that in person. And so again, I think if NSC could host a sub-page for each quarterly meeting or special meetings, that's one way. If it's not hard to navigate the Board of Regents website, but it would be good to have that internally.
And then, sorry, I'd also like to add that NSSA is committed to outreach for our students. And recently we just had a town hall to get students into the legislative process. And we are also committed to continuing student outreach for students to learn more information throughout the session. So those are some things that we can go ahead and do with students as well. And if students are interested in public comment or like anything that we've said here, we are also committed to getting a workshop done for our students so that they can go ahead and learn how to give public comment if they haven't done so already, so that we can go ahead and get them that experience.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I just wanted to clarify the minutes that you're allowed to speak in front of the Board of Regents. I thought it was 3 minutes. Is it 2, or is that for the legislature? 2, okay. I thought I saw on their website that it was 3 minutes. Have they just recently changed that, or?
I think during COVID, when you left a voicemail, it used to be 3 minutes. But it's 2 minutes, and there's actually a little timer that when you are standing, and there's a little thing where you push the button, it's timing you, and so you can see your time. The second thing that I should have mentioned is that even if a Board of Regents meeting isn't locally, so it was in the north, I think at the most recent time, you can give in-person public comment at the NSHE Administrative Building. It's very close to the UNLV Student Union. It's at Maryland, just north of Harmon. And you go in, I think you might have to walk through metal detectors, but you kind of sit, sorry, I have a lot of anxiety. So I'm like, you go in, you sit in the audience. When they're ready, when you're ready, someone will take your name and say like, please write your name that you're gonna give public comment, and then you go up and you'll see it. And if you go over, someone will let you know, or they'll just turn off your mic.
Wow, now I have to pare it down to 2 minutes.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes.
I'm ready for the hard questions now. I don't know if we have time, but
Let's bring on some hard questions.
To offer your own hard questions too, Anthony.
we have some here. Right?
Hello, my name is Dane Vasquez. I'm the executive secretary for NSSA, so a colleague of Kevin. I just wanted to ask, what are some recommended bills that you guys may suggest that students should be advocating for if they were to go to Carson City, and where can they find to look up those bills?
That's a good question. So you've been provided with the list, I believe, of bills that the Board of Regents either gave input on, or it took positions on, or at least noted as potential topics that are likely to come up this session. I think that's a really good list to start with. I think that we have to do a plug, the Nevada State College renaming. We now have a BDR that's out. There's not language yet of what that will look like, but we do have a BDR tracking that. I think the students did an amazing job. Thank you for that. So a BDR, which you could find on a system called Nellis. So not to be confused with like Nellis Air Force Base. If you Google that, you might get drawn to that. So Google like Nellis legislature, and this is it's the online tracking system to follow all things related to the legislature. You could find meetings, you could find when the committee meetings are going to happen, you could find budgets, you could find information about BDRs or bill draft requests, which essentially function as a placeholder for a bill that's to come. So it's just sort of like the topic, and then the actual language of the bill will come out later. So I definitely recommend, visiting that website, getting familiar with it. I think this will probably be covered in the workshop later, but I hope they walk through how to use the PLT, or the Personal Legislative Tracking System, to follow bills. Everyone gets a few free bills that they could track and monitor. And then also, as a nonprofit, we get steep discounts on that. I forget the amount, but it's like really cheap for, if you work for the government or for a nonprofit to utilize that system.
Click this QR that says legislative session. It'll take you to the agendas, and you can navigate the Nellis website with one L. So that's the other difference. Nellis, one L, not two L's.
And I'd also like to add, thank you for our Executive Secretary for that question. In particular for me, there are numerous bills that are in my scope of interest, specifically the student loan borrowers' rights, so that's BDR 162. So it establishes a regulatory regime for private sectors to ensure that student lenders are not taking advantage of borrowers. And then we have the Campus Safety and Sexual Misconduct Bill, so that's BDR 818, which funds a climate survey to assess the scope of this problem across NSHE institutions and improves existing training. And so this bill is a cleanup bill from 2021's Senate Bill 347. And there's also another one that is in my particular interest. It's the Citizenship Pathway Bill, which expands the free UNLV immigration clinic services to all NSHE institutions, including Nevada State College. And so these are some of my particular interests for the certain bills that are out there for student support specifically. And also, I'll throw a little plug for Assemblywoman Erica Mosca with her BDR 34-523, which seeks to allow students to access their transcripts even if they owe fees to their institution, but later on they'll go ahead and pay those as well. So those are my particular interests, and I strongly encourage students to support those as well.
Thank you so much. Did you have anything to add?
Just one small thing. Again, I think the sheet that was handed out is a really great starting place for things related to higher education. I was just going to make a comment that the Board of Regents are not individually, each region is not allowed to speak for the system, but if the system, or if they came together to say, we want to support a bill for student fee waivers as long as the legislature provides money to cover those costs, right? They could vote during a meeting to say NSHE is in favor or in opposition to a given bill. So again, they are bodies that are still very much intertwined. So like I said, I think your first entry point is through the Board of Regents meeting, because they're obviously going to pull out the bills that are directly impacting NSHE and discuss whether or not do we take a stand. For example, Senate Joint Resolution 7, what some of you may know as Question 1, is back on the ballot, and that is to potentially remove the regents from the Constitution. And so they did not take a stand on it last time, but again, these are things that you want to kind of keep your finger on the pulse on, because they would have impact to us.
All right, thank you so much to our panelists. Yes.
So this question was submitted online by an admin faculty member. Governor DeSantis and Republicans in the state of Florida are openly attacking higher education, particularly critical race theory and diversity initiatives. This is alarming. What can we do as an institution to stand by educators in Florida and protect against this type of action?
Yes, it's very, very concerning. As I said, I think where those types of things might first hit us in the state is through the Board of Regents. And this is my personal opinion, that I am concerned by some of our regents' stances and questions. For example, at the March meeting, it's a consent item to approve tenure, but the last March, our current chair, Chair Brooks, not chair at the time, but inquired about tenure and what that means, and could you remove faculty for other reasons. So I just feel like there are little inklings that indicate that this is something that we definitely need to keep our eye on. You could certainly, I know in the past, I think the Cultural Diversity Subcommittee work to have an anti-discrimination resolution passed. That might be something, again, that we encourage our regents to take up in terms of some resolution that says that we're against that. I unfortunately don't know the composition of our new, I think there's 5 new regents that started in January. I hope that our people who are working more closely with the regents kind of have a pulse on what that looks like. Yes, we definitely need to be mindful, because I think that those things are creeping, and by design.
You know, I haven't seen, at least from, you know, because that you mentioned the Florida governor. I haven't seen or heard our current Nevada governor discuss those kinds of attacks. I mean, I haven't, you know, so I don't think I haven't seen any bills on it or related to that this session in the legislature. So I think, you know, Nevada's not Florida, and I think it's important to know that, but it is important to call out these things as we see them and address them. Something that I want to maybe take a slightly different approach is the issues around diversity and equity inclusion are changing. So, and I think that's going to be largely triggered by some Supreme Court rulings coming up soon that are likely going to make significant changes, if not all but remove the previous affirmative action case law. And in the New York Times this week, I think it was on Tuesday, came out with a long sort of history of the affirmative action cases and maybe likely where it's going. But with this new 6-3 Supreme Court, the carve-outs for affirmative action in higher education are likely going to either go away or change and be significantly reduced. So I think that's something to think about. Or what does, you know, DI mean in 2023 in a post whatever that court case is going to be? I can't remember right now that world. And then, of course, what are the work that we're doing here on the ground in this state, and how can we sort of, you know, what do we do in this new environment? So I don't have an answer for that. It's sort of like a challenge of how we continue some of this work when the national narrative and the national case law is going to change dramatically. So it's just maybe a challenge and another way to just sort of highlight the importance of the time we're in currently and the moment we're in, where a lot of things are shifting quickly.
And I'd also like to add to that with a different approach. So I'm a history pre-law major, and as a young historian, I particularly enjoy the history departments, particular Dr. Shirley Brotbar and Dr. Griselda Will. They truly teach that that history repeats itself if we allow it, right? And we've seen these things before, and you know, like the Florida "Don't Say Gay" bill or things like that, right? If we allow that to happen, then it truly it's on us to try and act and not allow history to repeat itself, right? So I would have to say to really look at our history and review it, and to see what things are trying to be repeated and to not allow that. So that's my input with that.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you all so much. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists that joined us today. Thank you all so much. We're going to now transition into our workshop, Legislative Session 101, where you'll get to know some of those tools that our panelists talked about. So stick with us as we transition to that. Hello. Alrighty, thank you all so much for sticking with us as we transition to this Nevada Legislative Session 101. Thank you everyone who's watching virtually as well. Here today we have with us the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. Plan focuses on organizing communities and educating communities that have faced current and historic systemic marginalization. And this definitely reflects the population that we have here at Nevada State, both in our students and our staff. So we're very, very lucky to have them with us here today. And without further ado, I'll pass the mic to them.
Good morning, Nevada State College. I hope everyone's doing well. We're almost to Friday. I call today pre-Friday, so I always think it's worth celebrating. My name is Deanna Hugh Tran. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Nevada Immigrant Coalition Coordinator. And then I'll pass it to these folks to introduce themselves as well.
Good morning, everyone. I love Pre-Friday. I am Elena DiMaggio. I am the Immigrant Rights Program Manager over at Plan. And so a lot of the things that we do focus on specifically is immigration related, and I can pass it to David, which is my organizer.
Hey there, y'all. My name is David Beltran Barajas, he, him, and I am the Immigrant Rights Organizer here at Plan.
Okay, so just some general things that we hope to leave you here with today from this presentation and workshop is a good understanding of how the legislature works, at least at a basic level, identifying key terms, our current legislators, and the different types of lobbying, and also other ways to get involved with Plan.
And so what we have on here is kind of just like a crash course breakdown. And you might exactly just be asking, like, what even is the legislature? And I know that's a very detailed question, so we're going to break it down for you. So every 2 years, our Nevada legislature body does meet up in Carson City, which is our capital. And they're there for 120 days, which sounds like a lot, and it is. So exactly what can they do? Essentially, their main role is to change laws and policies that represent the public. So for example, a lot of the stuff that they do focus on, for example, formerly incarcerated individuals, they restored voting rights, and that was an actual bill that they had passed. Another bill that they had passed was for occupational licenses for undocumented folks. And a lot of these bills would not be able to be passed if it wasn't for you guys. And so what can't they do? Mainly what they can't do is directly change the Constitution. That's a very difficult process. And so it must be voted on by the general public. So that would also include you guys, but it's a lot more easier to focus on the bills and actually change communities that way. And then I can pass it to you.
Now, moving on to the legislative process, it's important to know that our legislature is bicameral. And so what that means that there are two houses. There are the Senate and the Assembly. So it's very similar to how our federal government system is set up. So beginning before any bills can even be heard, it always starts off, as the panel mentioned earlier, as a bill draft request. And that generally is just an idea. That's an idea that agencies, committees, or public officials can recommend, and that's also informed by the public. So organizations like Plan and me, if I have an idea on how to improve the community or things I want to change, I can speak directly to those folks to put in a BDR. And then once that happens, once they make those requests, generally they can go anywhere from hundreds to thousands. It's introduced, and then there's a first hearing, or first reading, I'm sorry. And then it's referred to a committee. And so those committees are decided by majority and minority leaders in each house. And there's about 9, so it's anywhere from education to infrastructure to public safety. And so it's referred to the appropriate committee, and then it's heard, and then they vote. They decide, do we want to continue this, or do we not care? Does it need to be revised? And then it moves on to the second reading. With that second reading, there can be the adapted amendments that folks had from the first hearing, and then it moves to the floor for a debate, and then folks vote again. And this can start either in the Senate or the Assembly. So if your senator recommended a BDR, it would first start in the Senate. If your Assembly person put in a BDR, it will start in the Assembly, and then it would move into the next House. And that's referred to the other House, and then it starts over again. So there's a first reading in that House, then there's a committee hearing, and then they'll vote on it. And then it'll move on to a second reading, and then there will be another floor debate, and then they vote. And then after that, it goes through a final consensus. So they'll agree on the amendments, if there are any, and that moves to the governor's desk. And there, it could either be signed or vetoed.
Awesome. So yeah, we're going to skip this one, but this one covers basic questions. If you wanted to take a picture really quick, we're going to skip this one just because it covers a lot, but it is good information. So we'll leave it up for a few seconds. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the jargon. So a lot of these words get thrown around a lot in a lot of the talk that we're talking about, and so we just wanted to define a few for you. One of the main ones is attaché. It's a fun word to say. Basically what it means is it's the staff assistant to each legislator. They can't necessarily do all of the work themselves. So it's kind of like their personal assistant, helping them run around and focus on the bills that they need to. LCB, this stands for the Legislative Counsel Bureau. So basically what this entails is all of the lawyers, the policy analysts, committee secretaries, and researchers who are helping draft these bills to make the legislature function more appropriately. BDR, it just stands simply for Bill Draft Request. This is before the bill gets a number. This is essentially just kind of introducing the bill. And then when the bill does get introduced, it will either start with AB or SB. So this will stand for either Assembly bill or Senate bill, and then this will be followed by a number. It just basically differs between the Assembly or Senate who introduced it. You'll hear the floor thrown around a lot, and this just means when the entire Assembly or Senate meet together to discuss certain things about the bill. And then there's also the caucus, which refers most frequently to the majority party in each chamber. So leadership also refers most frequently to the Senate Majority Leader or the Assembly Speaker and the Assembly Majority Leader. They're mainly the three that have the most power when they're meeting, and so you'll hear the word leadership thrown around. Whip, which is a really interesting one, it basically means it's a process of counting and ensuring votes within the caucus. I'm not entirely sure where that came to be, but that's just how they defer that to. And then the last one, really quickly, is just the building. This just means that the main building in Carson, and so they typically refer to just the building that they're meeting in because there is only one up in Carson. And that's mainly where all of the legislative processes are happening.
And so it's important to know kind of the positions and the faces of the folks that are representing you, anywhere from your Assembly district people to your senators, and then also other roles like Lieutenant Governor. So right now, currently, our elected governor is Joe Lombardo. Our Lieutenant Governor is Stavros Anthony. Our Senate Majority Leader is Nicole Canizaro, and our Senate Minority Leader is Heidi Sievers-Gansert. And we have some pictures here so you can see some of the different Assembly members that we've worked with in the past or Plan has worked with in the past. And currently there are 21 senators, there are 13 Democrats and 8 Republicans. The Democrats are one vote short of a 2/3 majority. And the Lieutenant Governor serves as the President of the Senate and runs the full Senate meetings. There are 42 members in the Assembly. 20 are Democrats and 14 are Republicans. And again, Democrats hold 2/3 or a supermajority right now. And so that's powerful in terms of when you're thinking about certain bills and the people that represent your communities and how you want to promote certain issues or ask for those BDRs. And then our Speaker of the House is Steve Yeager. Our Majority Leader is Sandra Haragui, and then our Minority Leader is PK O'Neill.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you all a question. Just shout it out or raise your hand and I can point at you, but it would just be easier for you to shout out. I want to know if you know who has the ability to lobby. And if it helps, think of the word lobby as more of advocate. That's a more easier word and it'll help you understand who can actually lobby. So if anybody wants to say out a word, a population, yourself, anyone? I'm blind, so yeah, I see a hand right there, right there. Would it be an organization or community leader? Correct, that is one. Anything else? Come on, all of us. There, I like that answer. One more. I won't put you guys on the spot anymore. Registered lobbyists. Wow, look at that. I love that answer. So yes, you're all correct. Everyone can lobby in this room. Some more people, just to name a few. Citizens of Nevada can lobby. Undocumented populations can lobby. I can lobby. David can lobby. Deanna can lobby. College students, high schoolers, all of those great populations. Your family and your friends can lobby, and your coworkers. So if you want to scan this QR code or take a picture of it, whatever works, this will lead you to our Mobilize link. And so we are having a few certain workshops and also some events that are going to be happening within the few upcoming weeks. A lot of them aren't up yet, but there is a few that may interest you. And this is going to help you prepare if you do want to lobby. We're going to be talking specifically about public comment for housing today, later at our office. And this will help you just prepare if you do have a story or if you do want to lobby for a certain bill that affects either you, your family, your friends, we can help prepare you for that. And again, we just want to think of the word lobby as advocate. I know it's a scary word, but it essentially just means that you can advocate on behalf of yourself and also your friends and family.
And one thing I want to add as well is that you don't have to have a license to lobby. You don't have to have a long political history to lobby. You don't have to be an expert in the topic in order to lobby. If you have an opinion, then you should lobby. But in the state of Nevada, during legislature, you do have to register as a lobbyist if you're not lobbying on an opinion that's your own. So if it's not a personal opinion and you're trying to advocate on behalf of another person, then you would have to register. But again, if you have an opinion, a personal investment, definitely go out and we'll talk about the different ways you can do that too. So the different types of lobbies, and again, ways to influence or persuade. You can send a letter or an email. I think with the pandemic, they've made it entirely more accessible than it has been in the past. You don't have to go to the Grant Sawyer building. You don't have to go to Carson City. You can also publish an op-ed or a letter to the editor. You can sign a petition or a postcard. There are a bunch of organizations right now that have petitions going out, that have even like e-postcards that you can send. You can call the elected official. They do listen to those voicemails. You can attend an elected official's local event. I know, at least in Southern Nevada, there's plenty of folks that come out to community events all the time just to interact with folks and to have those opportunities to hear what's going on. You can also do and schedule an in-person visit. Again, during the 120 sessions, so from now until June 5th, things are a little bit more hectic, so availability is limited, but I know a lot of officials are willing to try to find the time to set those up with you. You can also testify during a hearing, and again, those are posted on Nelis, N-E-L-I-S, to find the times of the hearings, and then also to put your name in to be queued up. And then now there are opinion polls. So if you type in your bill number, whether that's SB or AB, on that page, there's a blue hyperlink, I think, on the near the bottom left column. It'll say submit an opinion poll. It'll take you to this page where you just put in your general information, and then you just kind of type out exactly what it is that you're concerned with or any recommended changes that you have to it. And then we also put in a working definition of lobbying. There's a couple here. Again, it's to try to influence public officials for or against a specific cause. And then also lobbying is a form of public policy advocacy and educating the government. It is communicating with decision makers to encourage them to take a specific action on a piece of legislation. And again, I really like the educating the government part, because your personal experience, your lived experience is something that they don't have, and you're informing these systems that are intended to work on your behalf. So again, think of it as that way, as you're instilling and imparting information on the officials that might not know what's going on all the time year round. It's workshop time.
All right, if I could have everyone in this room, please scan this. I am gonna pick on some volunteers, so please do scan it. And I will give you a minute. I have already scanned this and I have my legislators up. This will take you to the Find My Legislator website. You type your address in and it'll pull up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 4 legislators that belong to you. The first one should be your federal legislator. In my case, that's Titus. The next 2 will be your state senator and your assembly person. So scan it, pull it up, because I'm going to be picking on 3 people here. My state senator is Pazina in District 12. And could you, yeah. No, backtrack to the next slide. It's the legislator slide. There we go. So this is what it should look like. My state senator is Pazina in District 12, and my assembly person is Marzola in District 21. And the whole point of this is to be able to lobby, right? But we need to know who we're directing our either support for bills or our opposition for bills at, right? So it's important to be able to know who the people that are legislating on your behalf, who you're constituent to, so you're able to, do this work effectively. So I hope that several people have done this, and I'm gonna call on some folks now. So you, sir, in the plaid, do you have your legislators? Can you tell me which ones you have? Yeah, federal. Okay. For sure. Okay, awesome. And see, now you have an insight of, this is the person who's representing me in the Nevada legislature. So if you have any opposition or support for bills that are important to you, you know who to direct your attention towards, right? And like I said, it's incredibly helpful. Let's see, you folks over here on the left, do one of you have your state senators and assembly persons? Oh. I think it's Ornlicker. Yeah, it's an odd name. Yeah, exactly yours. I'm not gonna say because I'm not sure. Ornlicker, right? Something like that. Okay, and then I'm gonna pick one last person. Marcela, do you have yours? Okay, awesome. For sure. Awesome. Thank y'all. For everyone else, if you did, search up your senators, go ahead and screenshot and just save it, because these are the people that you're going to be writing a public comment to, testimonial. You're going to be presenting testimonials to, right? Can you move into the next slide? And as mentioned earlier in the previous presentation, and here, the system that you guys will use for this is NELIS, the Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System. This will be the website you go to pull up BDRs or bills, submit public comment, and interact with the Nevada legislator online. After this, I believe, Mariana, you will be providing the digital links to that packet that we had. In this packet, you'll get a run through on how to use the NELIS site effectively. From what I hear, our site was nominated as one of the most user-friendly sites, but as you can tell, it's kind of gray blob. So it is helpful to have that information to be able to, work your way around the site. But yeah, Nellis will be the main site you use to be able to search the bills you're passionate about, the bills you want to support or oppose. Yeah, that's kind of it. And I do want to say, can you move into the next slide? Is that one too? Oh, no, that's yours. One last thing. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, right? There was a list of like senators and assembly people up there. It's important to remember that during public comment that these are just folks like you and I, and it's important to know who represents you because it demystifies and it takes that pressure off when you know that this is just a person just like myself. So when I show up and testify for the stuff that's meaningful to me, it does have a real impact. And as part of that, tonight we will be having a testimonial workshop at our plant offices to be able to learn how to write public comment and do testimonials. It's specifically based around housing issues. But I just did want to remind you on that. These are regular folks like you and I. Ruben De Silva was up there. I've met the guy. He's a school teacher and he's a very good friend. But yeah, he's just a regular dude. So it's always important to remember that. And I will kick it over to Deanna.
And also when you visit the Nellis website, I know we have a screenshot of the 81st session. It should say the 82nd, then it'll give you the current year, 2023. But again, as bills are coming out and there's language for them, if you don't know the exact number, and let's say you're interested in kind of seeing the content around a specific issue, you can actually search for it. So because this is a screenshot, this might not be helpful, but we'll send kind of the breakdown to you all in the email, but you can search for the subject. So if you're interested in water conservation, you can type that in and it'll pull all the bills that have that in that language. And you can start from there. So don't feel like you have to know the exact number because you can always start with just the subject.
And then just really quickly, while we're on this topic, the reason why we had you do that workshop is because if you're their constituents and you live in their districts, they specifically want to hear from you. I can go and testify, but if I don't live in their district, it's not as powerful as it directly coming from you all. I also can represent plan and lobby, but they don't really necessarily want to hear from grassroots and grass tops. It comes directly from their communities. And so it would just be super, super helpful if you do find any issues that you would like to advocate for, check it out. Just go on the website. And like we had said, there is going to be a handout walking you through it. And we are planning on doing some workshops in the near future. They might not be up on our Mobilize yet, but if you keep checking back on that link and if you sign up for our newsletter, you can get reoccurring updates on when we are going to have things like that.
One last thing on my part. Once this is all over, if you guys want, you can step at our table. We have a bunch of postcards related to mining justice issues. If you had searched up your senator and assembly person, you can, I think our folks out there are creating a few sample ones. You can direct those postcards to make sure that your voice is heard when it comes to mining justice issues and combating those mining companies that desperately want to continue to mine in Nevada and make their money without, worrying about what it is they do. But yeah.
And then lastly, we just kind of want to talk about PLAN and the different coalitions that they're a part of. So PLAN is under the coalition that I operate under, which is the Nevada Immigrant Coalition. And right now we're working on things like voting language access and language access generally for other institutions in the state, driver's license parity, decriminalizing street vendors, and then we are doing illegal services advocacy for one of our priorities as well. But they're also part of a Nevada Housing Justice Alliance. That's not to be confused with the other coalition, but this one is tenant-oriented. So one of the things that they're working on is source of income discrimination, tenant protections, eviction reform, rent stabilization. There's also the Nevada Immigrant Justice Coalition. There is the Green Amendment. Again, they focus on environmental justice, enhanced protections for outdoor workers, Also, there is the Nevada Mining Reform Coalition, and they're working right now on mining pit lakes reclamation and water conservation. Then there is the Let Nevadans Vote. So that's advocating for in-jail voting and then again, voting language access. There is the Justice Reform and Accountability Coalition, and that's dignity for incarcerated women. That's one of the bills that they're working on, and then also ending prison fines and fees. And then lastly, there's the Equality Coalition that this session they're focusing on HIV modernization, protection for transgender inmates, insurance coverage for gender affirming care, and adolescent access to preventative care. And then as always, we would love for you to stay in touch. If you're interested in getting involved in your community, this is Elena's email along with David's email. And then again, our table is out there. And then if you are interested in learning more about our coalition and specifically some of the immigrant priorities that me and the rest of our coalition members are working on, my email's at the bottom as well.
Yeah, so thank you all for being a part of this presentation. It was really, really helpful. Again, we are doing a housing public comment today at our plan office. If you need the information, it was on that QR code. You can sign up, but you can also, on your way out, stop at our table. We have 2 organizers out there right now, and they would be more than happy to provide you with all the details. Thank you so much. Yes? If we can get access.
So my question is kind of in line with the centralized information question. If we don't, if we don't necessarily, we're not formal lobbyists, but there's a group of us that kind of feel strongly about certain bills. Does it make sense to try and use similar language across different, however it is we're contacting our legislators? Or some people might feel like, well, I kind of want to say it how I want to say it. Like, there might be a strategy. Is the strategy better to have each individual write however the language comes from their heart? Or is it good to kind of hit the same key points so that legislators think this is, a common feeling among a lot of people? I really don't know. I feel like it could go either way. So I'd love to hear.
Stairs are the wrong width for walking quickly.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful question. And there's times where if you don't know where to start, there are organizations that give you a template. So they'll say, hi, my name is, I live in blah, blah, blah. You should do something with this bill because X, Y, and Z. But I think what really moves legislatures is just personal stories. It's just coming and telling folks why this affects me directly, or someone that I know directly. And although having, I think, like a structure and formality is helpful sometimes, I think they're kind of used to it because registered lobbyists also have like a script that they're reading from sometimes, and because there's so many, a lot of folks are using the same ones. And so at some point they're just going to check out if they're hearing the 4th person kind of reiterate the same message. And so if you're coming and you're just trying to talk about something very personal, I think that moves them a little bit more. But either or works. So don't be discouraged by if you prefer to use a template. When I first started, I had my mentor just write it out for me. But
yes, and just to add on, it's similar to what you were saying. If you do have a group of people, like specifically that are really dedicated, there are going to be lobby days in the future where you can actually, with a lot of organizations like Plan and NIC and any other or issue you care about, we will be having transportation up to Carson City. And so you can actually directly like share your stories there in person if you really wanted to. And a lot of the organizations will help you do that for free. There will be food, there will be transportation, and that's something that we're trying to work on in the future. So if you do want to learn more about the lobby days, definitely, are they on Nellis? They are on Nellis, but we do have like a list that we can send out to you. And we can also talk more about those one-on-one.
Are there any other questions before I move on to the tutorial? No? Okay. So all I did was just type in Nellis Legislature because I don't have this website memorized. And then it was the first link. Let me actually just show you what that, so I clicked on this and it's all in caps. So you'll click on it, and when it comes to bill tracking, you're gonna go in the right-hand corner here in this gray area, and it says tracking. You'll click that, and then you do have to sign up for tracking in order to track bills, which is useful because once you have an account, it'll log all the bills that you're tracking. Right now, the free version, I guess no, I shouldn't sign into mine. You guys don't want to know the bills that I'm tracking. But once you sign in, you'll click tracking, and we'll click about tracking. Okay. So you do have to pay to track bills, and it's very, very expensive, but there is a free version where you can track 10. So you'll 10 for free, yeah. You don't want to pay like 3 hundos to track 40 bills. But once you sign in, you can type in, let's see if I can do this without having, yeah, girl, come up. The initiative, okay. Exactly. Oh, I was just gonna sign in for you. Oh, sorry. I was like, take the stage. Oh. So close to free. It's closer to free than not, yeah. Okay, so once you're here, you're gonna click this tab again, and it's gonna drop down. It'll give you my meetings, my tags. So you can tag. I think it's like if you have like words that you want to tag, or if it's tagged for different administrators or committees. But we're gonna click Add Tracked Content. And then once you're on here, it'll just populate the current bills that have language for them that have been introduced. But let's say, so I'll do, yeah, is there an issue that we want to? So let's do. There might not be any yet, but let me see. I doubt it would be a BDR. AB 81. Okay. Yeah, so it'll, if you have the exact number, it'll pull up and then you'll click. And it will take you to this page. This just kind of keeps tabs of like all the current hearings, upcoming hearings, any votes, and then conference committees on it. But if you just want to look at the text, you'll click text, and then it will pull it up. Also, there's an explanation here where it says matter in bolded italics is new. Matter in between brackets brackets is material to be omitted. And there's times where, if you'll see, these are revisions. So it'll start off just plain text, and then as folks are convening and asking for feedback, they'll start putting in revisions this way. So you know that kind of the type of exchanges that are happening on the content of this bill. And then if you do want to track it, we're going to go back. Oh yeah, click to track, yes. So you can click here. I've done, let me see. So if you want to mass track, sometimes, sometimes I'm chaotic and I'll do this. I'll just click all of them, and then it'll, true, 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 true. Yeah, you can untrack too. And then you can do it this way too. So if you're not interested in pulling to the page, you can click that. And I haven't clicked anything, so I won't use up your tokens. And then once you have once you have it tracked, you can go to manage track content to see kind of the list. Do you want me to delete these? Okay. I was like, did I do this? Yeah, and so this will populate here. And then what's nice about having a track system is that they'll email you. They'll email you as soon as there's any movement on them. So if there's a hearing, if there's been revisions, if it's been referred to different committees. I know that sounds exciting, but it's actually very, very hectic because it'll happen like in the middle of the night sometimes. But yeah, it's very convenient if you don't want to just consistently be revisiting this page on your own will. They'll email you with updates too. Interesting question. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I think there is like a whole department that takes all of this and then at night routinely just processes it through their system. So that is up to your discretion. Let's say for me, so my background is in social work. So I have a different set of ethics and duties that I have to abide by. And so I might not want to put my work email because then that might go against some of like the code of ethics that I have to do as a professional. But if you are advocating again in your personal capacity, it might be best to just use your personal email, like an appropriate personal email. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. And you can say it exactly like that too.
Thank you so much to Plan for joining us today. Another round of applause, please. And thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us for our town hall discussion today. We will be sending out those documents that Plan mentioned with more timelines and step-by-step Nellis directions and other really great material that they've sent to us. So thank you all again. Really helpful because even some of these things I was like, I had no idea. I did not.